Okay, we are back. We just reset the flight sim. It seems to have crashed there for us, but just getting back to where we were, and that was a basically starting up the right-hand engine. So we'll come over here and go down to this side here, switching on the main avionics. Our fuel tanks, as we can see there, is just half full there. Plenty of fuel there to get to Manchester. So with that all in mind, the parking brake is set. Everything is all decent there, and starting up the right-hand engine. Placing the throttles down, switching off the fuel, switching on these, and thrust levers to idle. So now switching on right engine. Okay, put that on. So there we go. We've got the right engine starting to spool up. Looking in on the 17% there for M1 looks good. So bringing in the fuel on the conditioning and keeping an eye on that. You see it spooling further on up. When we get to around 51%, we'll switch off the starting motor and the engine should be self-sufficient there. And there we go. Okay, so this is 51%. Switching off the motor. Alternator is on. And just check that we have power coming from the right alternator. And there we go. It's charging. So we leave it on the left gen for when we start the left engine. And down to here, switching on the left motor. So keeping an eye on the engine, waiting for it to spin up. Once we start spinning up, we'll check that we get actually 17% before we'll introduce the fuel into the engine. Okay, and now looking for 17% on engine number 1. And there it is right there. So introducing the fuel. I'm watching for the engine to light, as you can see it. Waiting for it again, 51% before we switch off the starter assistance. And that looks good. Switching off the starter motor. Switching on the alternator. Just checking that we've got power flowing through, and we do there. Left and on. That's excellent. So that's those on. Putting in the full fuel on both engines. And now switching on the master avionics. The other lights, we can switch on strobe, navigation, nav, icing, taxiing, and we get the landing lights later on. Pitot heats and all the icing equipment is now on. Only memo here is the parking brake in the center, and that is correct. So today we did decide that we're not going to be using GPS. We're going to be using VOR to VOR, and the flight plan that we have is going to be out of Dublin. And once we take off out of Dublin runway 28, we're going to be tracking towards the Dublin VOR, and then we'll take this track out towards another VOR, which is Wallasey on the far side, and we'll tune those two beacons in as we go along. And from Wallasey, we'll head out approximately on an easterly track of 090 to pick up the ILS for runway 23 right in Manchester. So setting up the navigation aids before we go. Looking at the weather, let's get the weather for the QNH, and once we bring that in here, Dublin, and it says 1037. So this is set in old, or should I say the American system of inches of mercury, 1037 is equal to 30.62. So we'll put 30.62 up on the bar reference. 30.62. That's a very high pressure day today. 30.62. And that's on the standby. Down onto the main one. It's gone far too much there. 30.41, 31.41 I should say. 30.39, so let's get in there. And it's now set to 30.54, just a few more clicks up. And 30.59, 3 more. 1, 2, 3. 30.62, so that's all set. And that looks right, 265 feet above sea level, which looks spot on. Now, setting up the radio navigation aids, we did say we want to track to the Dublin VOR first. So if we just bring up the flight plan, and we're going to bring up also on radio 1, we're going to put in the Dublin VOR frequency. And that is 114.9, which you can check that on the chart later. 114.9. We're going to put that to the main one. And going back here, we can see that VOR 1 is actually tuning in. And we can also put up the DME for that as well. So, how do we do this? The DME is... we'll get to that in a moment. However, I can put it up. CDI VOR 1 is correct. Bearing pointers, we'll switch those on to nav 1 so we can get a little bit of extra information. And there we go. So 4.8 nautical miles is the Dublin VOR, and we can actually see it's pointing up relatively north from our position here at this moment. So 4.8 nautical miles. So that's that. Once we get going, we'll track towards that VOR, and looking at the map here, it's about a course of 095. So we will select that course of 095 coming out of the Dublin VOR, and we'll track that radial all the way out. So think of a VOR, for those of you that are not familiar with it, think of it as a radio beacon and like a spokes on the wheel of a bicycle, and there's 360 spokes coming out of that. We can select any one of those spokes, tune it in on our course, and fly that course by centralizing the needle on the instrument in front of us. That's much easier shown once we're in the air, and we can see that we can actually select any one of them, and approximately the one of 095 takes us all the way over towards Wallasey. So once we get to that one, we then track towards the Manchester one. And that's how basically we fly from VOR to VOR. So just putting that away there for the moment. We've got everything all set up here. The first VOR is actually tuned in. And I think we are ready to go. So let's release the brakes and let's reverse out of here. That's the handy thing about having turboprops, using reverse thrust. Probably not something you'd want to do in the real life. Once there's a pushback truck available, you will actually get him to give you the push. However, I think that's good enough there for us. And there we go. So we're back in, and let's taxi towards the active runway. A little bit more power. So taxiing down and backtracking runway 34 all the way down to runway 28 left in Dublin. And let's select flap 2s. So now flap 2 is selected. Dublin looking very well. Great scenery that was added to Dublin. It is payware, and the default scenery is actually quite good, but this does really make all the difference for the detail. So we're clear on the left. There's nothing on the approach. And clear on the right. And take off. Airspeed live and cross checks. V1 and rotate. And positive climb and gear up. So we're going to adjust our altitude for the autopilot. So we'll select an altitude of 5,000 feet initially. We'll switch on the autopilot. It's not coming on for some reason, okay. There we go. Master caution and all yaw dampers off, that's understood. So we're going to go for holding the altitude, so flight level change with FLC at 164 knots. So the aircraft was now going to climb to 5,000 feet at 164 knots. We'll now select the heading, and that will start bringing it around towards the north, where we start tracking that beacon, and 2 stages of flaps up. So looking out just to the north of Dublin there. Okay, so I did say earlier on that we'd be looking for roughly a radial of 0.85. So if we look in closer here, I'm going to select on the course. I want a 0.85. So watch it in magenta here. Sorry, 0.94 should I say. 0.94 is the course we want. And now we can see that radial is coming close. If you read the course, 042. So I'm intercepting that spoke of 042 at the moment. However, I want to intercept the spoke of 094. So I'm going to place that in there. 094. So when that bar starts to come in and centralize, that means I will be intercepting that one, and then I can turn and keep tracking that right in the center all the way out over the Irish Sea towards Wallasey. Once we get a bit closer to Wallasey, we'll actually start using that VOR because it's getting closer and stronger, and obviously that would be a good airmanship thing to do rather than using one that's far away. So we're just still heading north over Dublin towards close to the VOR, and I see we're just after crossing it at this moment in time. We weren't watching that, so I'm going to put on nav. So it'll actually, aircraft will now start looking to navigate and intercept that radial of 094. We're actually so close to it at the moment. We just need to use probably the reciprocal because I'm heading east, but the actual radial that I'm on will be the 094. On this side inbound, it's the opposite of 180 degrees, which we would use then. But we'll keep a close eye on this and what you're picking up. So there we are, level at 5,000 feet. The power is now set. And just to assist the aircraft, if I go on to a heading of east, just till we get away from the VOR, because it gets a little bit confused as it gets close. And we'll watch it then, pick up the radial, and then we'll engage it. So there's the lovely Malahide and Howth area in the distance there. And that's the Swords estuary just on the nose. And heading over towards Skerries. So I'm now heading 084. The green bar is to my right hand side, so it's telling me I need to fly over that direction to pick up the track of 094 that I've got set. So let's pick up a heading roughly around 110, and we'll watch for that green bar to come in. So this is the course that we have selected. We also have these pointers which is pointing directly at the beacon, and it's telling us if we were to turn onto a heading of 250 roughly there, we'd fly directly to the beacon. Watch the tail coming in. As the tail starts coming around towards the course that we wanted, we'll also see the bar coming in and centralize, and then we'll select navigation on our autopilot, and it will pick up that bar and keep it tracked because we have selected 094 here. So as you can see, the end of the tail of the pointer is starting to get closer to the head, and as it gets closer, this is going to start moving in. So now I'm going to engage nav over here, and I'm asking the plane, when you pick this up, start navigating. Now it's turning onto it a little bit to the right as we see the bar starting to come in, and the aircraft will correct its course to keep that green bar centralized between the pointer and the tail. We can confirm that by looking at the FCU here. So it's VOR tracking through the autopilot, holding an altitude of 5,000 feet, all in the green. And we're on our way. So let's have a little look outside. Leaving the Irish coast. That's amazing scenery there. It's very accurate, even the little island that's just off the coast of Dublin. It's all very indicative. So as you can see, the aircraft is correcting itself that little bit more just to get perfect onto that radial, and it'll also take into account any wind that is trying to steer the aircraft off track. So we're at 5,000 feet. We can bring back the props a little, reduce the noise in the cabin. So having a look in the back, it's actually a very nice aircraft. It's a KingAir 350, and it can actually seat 9 people. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 3 along the back there. And it's also a little bit of room up in the nose, I believe, for some luggage. So it's a pretty nice aircraft. I think they first came out in the 60s, and they became very much of a workhorse for a lot of not necessarily international airport to international airport, but smaller airfields, and they have quite a useful payload capacity as well. And 9 people is, you know, it's quite enough when you're dealing with small airports and bringing people from A to B. So it has become quite a desirable aircraft. I believe even one from the 70s, 80s now, they're still costing somewhere up to 2 to 3 million. So they ain't cheap either in aircraft terms. So having a little look over anything in regards to the pressurization, we don't really have to worry about that today. We're only at 5,000 feet, so we don't need the cabin pressurized. Once we go past 10,000 feet, that's when pressurization becomes fairly important. The fuel is plenty there to get us to Manchester, little over just under halfway full there. And we'll switch to Irish temperature, 5 degrees outside, and routing on to Manchester. So it'd be nice now at this moment in time, we'll use our second radio to actually identify when the Wallasey VOR is coming into range. And basically we do really want to track directly to that. So the moment it comes in range, we would probably switch over from the Dublin instead of tracking outbound of 097. Like we see the Dublin VOR is getting further and further away from us there at 23.2 nautical miles, and that's just going to keep increasing. So what we'll do is we'll have a look and tune in the Wallasey VOR on radio number 2. So flight plan and navigation frequency number 2. So to get that, I'll just go into the navigation charts. We have the Wallasey VOR here. So I have it selected up here, and it's 114.1. So 114.1, and transfer that in as the active frequency on navigation number 2. Now to get it actually to display, we have number 1. I'll just call this up here. So the bearing pointers, navigation 1, which is shown here, and navigation 1, which is shown here. So that's 2. One of them we don't need. So let's put it to navigation number 2, because that's the radio that we tuned in. And now we can actually see it's actually picking up the Wallasey VOR. And it's 85.5 nautical miles away. And it's that looks like a fairly strong signal that we could tune up now onto the Dublin VOR. Select the 094 inbound and let it track all the way. So let's do that now. 114.1. Let's tidy up here. So tune in flight plan 114.114.1. I'm going to enter that. So now it's in a standby, and let's just relook at that. The active frequency is 114.9. That's the Dublin VOR behind us. And 114.1 is the standby frequency. So let's transfer that in. And now we can see it is transferred up onto our navigation radio number 1. We're nearly on the course. We have 094 set. All we need to do now is press navigation here, and the plane is going to adjust its path just to bring that green bar in just that fraction more. It's just a little bit out. And it's going to stay on a course there in a heading of about, what's a 109, just until it centers up a little bit more. And then we should see the aircraft making a left-hand turn, tracking inbound to the Wallasey VOR. We see it's 79.2 nautical miles away, so a little bit of time to run. Already in the distance, you can see some of the hills there over in Wales, and we should be able to see Holyhead, where the ships park, as we get a little bit closer. So just disregarding that for the moment, let's double check all the electrical supplies is good. Left gen, right generator, triple feed, and batteries all looking fairly healthy. Don't need any of the master lights. So we've got the Track IR headset today. That's what we're using. It basically clips onto the headset. So everywhere I turn my head, so turn it to the right, it brings in the natural view on the right hand screen, and turn it to the left, it pretty much does the same. I've been playing around with this now for about an hour. I have to say, it's a complete game changer when it comes to actually just using the cockpit. Instead of using the mouse, dragging it around, looking for the buttons to press and so forth, you only now have to basically look where it would be naturally in the cockpit. Even turning your head left and right, not left to right, but tilting it left to right, it follows it extremely well. So I must say it certainly has become one of my favorite tools now, even in the last hour, to use with flight sim. This is the first time I've had anything like this before. So we see the aircraft actually straightening itself up there. It's bang on line with the radial that we need of 094, going inbound to the Wallasey VOR, and 71.6 nautical miles away. So looking pretty good at the moment. And just check a few of the small bits and pieces down here. Pressure is good. Everything's all on. Yep, pido's on. And the de-icing we don't need today because we're actually in clear weather there. Excellent, we're doing well. Okay, I'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, so how are we getting on? There is Wales in the distance there. Just trying to pick out Holyhead. I I think I think it's just, it could be just about where I have the mouse pointing there, just to the north, or maybe here. Here, we'll have a little look outside as we fly over. Oh, there it is there. There it is there, on the outside, just to the right hand side of the aircraft. So let's have a little look. Just over there in the distance, we can actually see the port of Holyhead. That's where the Stennet and Irish ferries there link up to, from Holyhead to Dublin. Let's have a little look. Okay. Don't forget, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch and Twitter. And don't forget, if you want to hit the subscribe and follow bell, that'll give you indication, a calling bell as we like to call it, when we're going to go live on the stream. Later on tonight, also, those of you who follow Fly UK, we are doing a dual cockpit flight. And we have a little surprise from where we're going. It won't be the usual around Europe, it'll be somewhere different today. And we'll be doing a live stream tonight at 8 o'clock, so don't forget to look that up. Fly UK is his channel, and give him a follow and a like. We're on there a couple of times a week, doing dual flying on the Airbus 320. So having a little look down, we are 52 nautical miles away from Wallasey, and then from Wallasey probably a further 20 to 30 nautical miles out to Manchester. So, looking at our approach from Manchester this afternoon, we will probably be visual. However, just in case there's any cloud around, I think it'd be a good idea to look up the ILS for Manchester, just in case we have to do an instrument approach, and it'd be runway 23 right. So on the approach for runway 23 right is the LOC DME approach. It's 105.9, so that is going to be the frequency for it. What I will do is place that into the standby for nav1, because we'll use that for the instrument approach should we need it later on. However, if we do become visual, it'd be quite nice to fly the visual approach itself. So putting that in on the standby is 109.5, and we just press enter. We won't actually transfer that in. So enter, and that should be on the standby frequency there, and we see it in the background as 109.5, so that's fine. There's another VOR we can actually tune into, is the Manchester VOR of 113.5. So why don't we put that in on our navigation 2, just to give us an indication as to where we are. 113.55. Transfer that in. Okay, so from Wallasey, it's 45.7 nautical miles, and then there's a further 30 odd nautical miles towards Manchester. So let's have a look at that up on the chart. So here is Wallasey, and then it's 30 nautical miles towards Manchester, where we'll pick up runway 23 right for the landing this afternoon. Spectacular sunset there now in the distance. Very calm waters as well. I actually, a few days ago, not on the stream, but I actually took the KingAir, and we flew it up as far as the Faroe Islands, and looking at the real world weather, which we had switched on at the time, getting down low to the sea for the approach, the waves and the detail that they've actually brought in the last update is extremely good. Also, the clouds, the volumetric appearance of some of the clouds, it's getting more and more real. I mean, I started going back in the very, I think it was the late 80s, early 90s with Microsoft Flight Simulator, and the difference between then and now is they're just not comparable. They have really concentrated on the graphics on this one, and it is very good. Although all those of you who are interested in a little bit more realism, I have been flying the Airbus 320 on X-Plane. I've been also using that. The graphics probably not as advanced as what they have in Flight Sim 2020. However, the Airbus 320 towless version, which is an add-on, I think they're selling that for $79. It's so well worth it because you get a control panel on it, and on the control panel you can actually program in a failure of your choice, be it a engine, electronic, a hydraulic, and there's multiple amount of failures. You can actually double up on failures as well. Coming from a real 320 background to looking at what they have developed on the sim, they've really actually gone way above what they need to do from a freeware point of view. On the 320 on Flight Sim 2020, on X-Plane using the towless version, that one is the payware, and on the FS20, on the fly-by-wire one on the Microsoft Flight Simulator is the free version. And those guys, again, all voluntary, have done an extremely good job at producing a fairly close, realistic A320 for the Flight Simulator. However, as I was saying on X-Plane, you can program much more detailed features regards of failures and the procedure regards of ECAM, and you can get pretty familiar with what's going on in an Airbus 320 on that. So if you haven't got that, just check that one out. Have a look at some of the stuff on YouTube, and I'm sure you'll be fairly impressed. So having a quick look at where we are at the moment, the fuel looks pretty good. There's no leaks, and still 30 nautical miles off the Wallasey VOR, 61 nautical miles away from Manchester, with the ILS tuned in the background, ready to go. So we're in great shape. Haven't used VATSIM this afternoon. I've just had a look. There was no control for the areas that we were flying in. However, that's probably a little bit early in the days for the guys. They normally come out, they're like night owls, come out at night time and provide some great service. So if you haven't used VATSIM, do give it a go. It brings the flight simulator to another level regards of realism, and the interaction with the guys on VATSIM, I certainly give them a big thumbs up. How real they keep it. There was one that I was doing before, and I never expected, where I was doing a small transit of the oceanic area, and right enough, the oceanic controller was active that day, and had to do a full clearance a full oceanic clearance to transit the airspace. So they really have done a fantastic job on maintaining that service, and it's free. So do give it a go if you're into Flight Simulator. It'll bring you to the next level. Okay, so having a look. Ooh, stretching across. Okay. So just to double check one of the alternators, I'm going to switch off the alternator for the right engine, just to see do we have a drop, that we can isolate it. So there's the alternator off. We have the master caution, and the right gen is indicating there. So clear the master caution and just double check up at the top. Left generator first. Right generator is 0, that's correct. Okay, so let's switch it back on. Excellent, we're doing well. So as we come close to the Wallasey VOR, as we can see, we're just under 20 nautical miles away from it. I'm also going to bring our heading bug around to match the heading that we're using. Okay, so just bringing heading around. It's about 095, so bring the heading around to 095. There we go. As we get closer to the beacon, the aircraft can also have a tendency just to wobble a little bit because it's trying to maintain a very, very fine course. The closer you get to the beacon, the more finer the adjustments will have to be, and you're better off just having the aircraft on a heading to overfly the beacon and then pick up your outbound track should you wish to do that. However, what we're going to do today is when we overfly the beacon, we're just going to be tracking the Manchester generally towards the Manchester VOR. We won't be using any beacons regards of tracking, but just the pointer, and that's all we would be using. Once we get closer to it, then we'll pick it up visually with a landing on runway 23 right. So let's see what the weather is in Manchester at the moment. Let's see, can we pick it up? Dublin, Manchester, no, not showing yet, not close enough. Valley, we have everything else but Manchester. Give it a little bit of time. We'll get it in a moment. Okay, let's have a little look out. Oh, look, we have a ship down there. Haven't seen one of those before in the flight sim. That's very representative of flying in this area. There is wind farms out off the coast, and it looks like Flight Sim 2020 has absolutely nailed the detail on that. Oh, no, slipping off the chair. So the fact that we're visual now, what I'm going to do is bring our altitude down to 3,000 feet, 3,500 feet. That is the sector safe altitude in Manchester. But we're visual, we're not going to be hitting any major objects. So how to do this on the KingAir? If we select our altitude, just by using the altitude knob here on the FCU, and we'll select it down to 3,500. Okay, now to activate it, we can do it a number of ways. We can actually say to the autopilot, hold a speed of 231 knots or 232 knots, and then if I reduce the power, it will descend down to our selected of 3,500 at that speed once I press flight level change. I could actually manually descend myself down to 3,500 feet, and once I get there, we could press altitude button, and that will hold the current altitude. So let's go down slowly. We could also actually change our VS. We can actually select a vertical speed and to creep down slowly. So let's actually do that. I'm going to press VS. VS has now become the active. We're going 0 feet per minute at the moment, and it's waiting to capture the altitude of 3,500 feet. So let's bring it down. I'm going to select minus 500 feet per minute. And once it's in a vertical speed mode, we just need to keep an eye on our speed that it doesn't creep all the way into the barber's pole. And the fact that we're descending and starting to get towards our approach, we'll put our props back to fine. Okay. So this is the city of Liverpool. You see John Lennon Airport just out there between the wiper and the outpost. This is the runway 2709 in Liverpool. So 500 feet a minute rate of descent. We're going out to 3,500. Currently at 4,400. We have approximately 2 minutes before we'll actually reach our level. So we have flown just over the Wallasey VOR. We can see now down in the left hand corner, it's starting to get further away from us. 3.7, 3.8, and the little arrows pointing behind us. So and we also see the other head of the other arrow is pointing ahead of us. So that's for number 2. So we're going in the right direction. We still keep going. There we go. So we're approaching our 3,500 feet. Okay, so as you can see, 3,500 feet is just now being captured. Altitude, 3,500 feet. We're in default roll, so let's just keep our heading. Press heading, and heading is now engaged on the autopilot. So we're in a heading mode. So by maintaining that heading, we'll also have that little arrow to give us a general direction as to where we're going, which Manchester is straight ahead. We can now switch over to the ILS frequency just so that we can have an idea from our orientation where the runway is, how far we're away from it, and so on. So if we go into on the nav1, we did back tune it earlier on at 109.5, and let's transfer that in. And it's given us a general direction as to where the runway is and where it's laying. So let's have a look at this in more detail. It's currently indicating that we're flying generally towards the ILS, towards the runway. And if you can see, it's pointing 051 and 230. So generally 0523, which is the runways, which are the runways, I should say, in Manchester. As we go beam the runway, another point to note, it's also telling us we're 16.8 nautical miles, and the ident is India Mike Mike. So let's see, is it actually picking up the correct thing? So ILS for 23 right, and we should be picking up the India November. Is that what we're looking at there? Let's have a look down here. It's India Mike Mike. Okay, so we don't have the correct one tuned in. So for runway 23 right, we need to be India November 109.5. So let's get a little bit closer and see how this works out. Let me just see, is the other runway 23 left? That could be India. Maybe that's the one that's active today. VOR 23 left doesn't have an ILS on it. So that might just pick up, even in the real world, if you're that far out, you can be picking up an ident from another radio station, another beacon, and that will become more crystal clear and will identify correctly as you get closer. So what I can see is Manchester off into the distance there. I don't think we're going to have to do an ILS approach today. Oh, it's we need to now get the weather, because the QNH has just changed in the area. So let's have a look. Weather for Manchester. We have Manchester. There we go. There's Manchester. Let's just pick it back up again. No. There we go, Manchester. So it's at 1038. 1038, and when you convert 1038 into inches of mercury, that works out as it's, I think it's 30.65. So let's do that there. 30.65. Just bring that in 65. There we go. And down here, let's bring it up a little bit more. 3065, and there we go, inches of mercury. So here's the weather in Manchester. So I'm going to bring on a heading to parallel downwind of the runway. Let's have a little look at that weather again. Maybe we can use 05. Oh, it is 05. Okay, so 05. I didn't look at that earlier on. I should have. So 05 left. It's India Mike Mike. It's to be identifying, and it's identifying as the India Mike Mike. So that's the reason why. There's always a reason. There's always a reason. So we are actually now in a wrong position for the runway. So let's do a turn of 180 degrees and track back out again. Heading. And we'll turn around. The runway's over on our right hand side, but we're not lined up for it. We're actually going to start lining up for the westerly configuration, so we'll go back around and go for the easterly configuration. And if we looked at the actual instrument, it was indicating to us that this is the ILS that's being used and the India mic. So that's why we always check the plates to make sure that we have the correct one tuned in, that you're actually correctly aligning with the correct runway, and so on. So it's vitally important to check that information. As you can see from the weather, it's the wind is 0503 knots. So rightly so, the easterlies would be active today. So I'm going down paralleling the runway. So let's have a look down on the instrument. And as we can see, I am flying away from the runway. This is getting increasingly bigger, and it's telling me the runway is out over to my left hand side. And the blue arrow is actually pointing to where the start of the runway is. So by putting all that together, we can start working out where the runway is, when I need to slow down, when I need to configure the aircraft. So I'm going to now descend to 3,000 feet, and we'll do it with VS again, a minus 500 feet a minute. Okay, now will be a good time to start bringing the heading around, start turning for the runway. So we'll basically pick up a base. So we're effectively now 9 miles away. It's probably time to start thinking about coming down a little bit further to 2,000 feet. This time I'm going to use flight level change and reduce the speed. Okay, we'll get that in a moment. And also the fact that we're going to be intercepting the center line of the runway, we will arm the approach button here. Do that in about 30 seconds from now. So having a look out, so can we pit there? We're picking up the runway there now. So arming the approach. We're 6.5 nautical miles away. I think it's good enough now. We can actually just take a visual approach at this point in time. So we disconnect the autopilot. Autopilot disconnect. So we're hand flying from here on in. So let's take flaps. Gear down. So visually with 2 reds, 2 whites, so we're on profile. Four whites, so we're getting a little bit high. Let's bring the power back. And let's get down onto profile. Just small adjustments, nothing too harsh. So we're looking for keep the speed about 130 knots. We're looking to get 2 reds and 2 whites. There we go, on profile, straighten it up. The wind is straight down the runway at just 2 miles an hour, so practically no wind. Speed's going away a little bit, so reducing the thrust, bringing the nose up to maintain 2 reds and 2 whites. Coming across the threshold, closing the thrust levers. Whoa, a little bit of power. Oh, bit of a wind there. And reverse thrust. And using the brakes. Excellent, we are in Manchester. So we'll taxi up to the gate just straight ahead of us. Wow, what a sunset today. Lots of general aviation aircraft parking on jet aircraft stands. Okay, so we'll just come up to where these guys are. Yeah, there's a guy on that stand, so we'll keep going a little bit. Yeah, we just put it in here beside this guy. There we go. Here we'll do nicely. So we'll set the parking brake, and that is done. Switch off the alternators. Right one off, left one off, fuel to 0. and we should see those. Cancel that master warning. We're aware of those. And engines. Okay, we know. Super. So switching off the master avionics so we don't drain any of the batteries, and continuing on with the main master switch. There we go. Welcome to Manchester. Parking not the best in the world, however, we are here, we are safe, and look at that for beautiful scenery this afternoon. Beautiful sunset in Manchester. Well, really appreciate anybody who gives the video a like and give the channel a follow. Don't forget, tonight we will be flying dual cockpit tonight on Fly UK, and somewhere nice and exotic in store for us. So I want to say thank you very much. Don't forget to follow us and like us on Facebook, also on YouTube. If you hit the notification on YouTube, you'll get notifications as to when we are going live, and you can feel free to come and join us. So I'll just leave with these images and a nice setting, sunset setting in Manchester for this afternoon.